My second lecture is on what is contemporary theology. Now that we have understood what is theology, as simply discourses about God, or a combination of theo and logos, or word of God, or study of the word of God, and it's how it relates to creation, we need now to ask ourselves, what is this contemporary theology? Why call it contemporary? How different is it from other theologies? Now, contemporary theology is generally defined as a study of theology and theological trends from post-World War to the present times. Roughly, it covers the 20th century to today. Now, the major categories typically addressed by contemporary theology include fundamentalism, neo-orthodoxy, Pentecostalism, Afro-Pentecostalism, evangelism, neo-liberalism, post-Vatican II Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox theology of the 20th century, and the charismatic movement, among other things. Now, in addition to these larger categories, contemporary theology also deals with specialized areas such as liberation theology, feminist theology, and various ethnic theologies. With a wide variety of credos involved, few scholars would claim to serve as experts in contemporary theology. Rather, the trend is to specialize in one or more areas of contemporary theological research and not to be everywhere. Now, a more recent branch of contemporary theology is the study of interfaith dialogue. Now, historic Christian theology is compared with the worldviews of non-Christian belief systems as the basis for dialogue between different faiths. Recent pursuits have focused on the shared values between two or more faiths, such as the Abrahamic faiths, you refer to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, or Eastern religions, that includes Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christian movements such as underground Chinese church. Now, contemporary theology is primarily a field of academic scholarship. As such, it addresses intellectual challenges facing theology, which includes science, social sciences, and religious practices. While many contemporary theologians share a Christian heritage, not all do. In fact, many agnostic or even atheistic scholars have entered the field and are teaching their views regarding faith and belief in contemporary society. Now, for the Bible-believing Christian, contemporary theology is important as it traces the development of beliefs in recent history. However, it is critical to realize that contemporary theology often departs from traditional Christian theology when it evaluates faith in the context of various social movements or in comparison with other belief systems. Now, adhering to a biblical worldview is not usually the goal. Those who want to understand what God's word teaches on today's important topics can find helpful information in a wide variety of contemporary theological materials. However, the Bible itself does not change. It is a standard of truth for the believer, both now and forever. Now, examples of contemporary or recent theologies include Latin American liberation, Black theology of USA or North America, and then Black theology of South Africa. There is African Christian theology, as some people just call it African theology, though that's an error, it should be African Christian theology. There is African theology of reconstruction. There is incarceration theology, where gospel and culture are in dialogue. or in talking terms, there is reconciliation theology, there is Filipino theology of struggle, the theology that removed the dictator Ferdinand Marcos in 1986 when Cardinal Jaime Sin, the Archbishop of Manila, organized a countrywide demonstration. Hence, that's a political theology. There is another Asian theology called Water Buffalo theology. There is Mujerista theology. There is Mijung theology, again from Asia. There is also now generally liberation theology, although so many theologies claims to have the liberation aspect. Or there is feminist theologies in general, particularly in the West. In Africa, since 1989, we have African women's theology, which was inaugurated by Professor Mase Amba Oduyoye in Accra, Ghana, 1989. There is also theology of development. There is Marxist theology, whereby theologians tend to employ some element of Marxism, particularly those political theologies of Latin America, and black theology of USA, and black theology of South Africa. They have tended to lean towards Marxist radical approach in addressing Christian matter, particularly where there is oppression of the poor. There is militancy and urgency to focus on verses like Exodus 3, where Moses got people from Pharaoh's dictatorship to the promised land, or whether he reached there or not. The idea was to get people to the promised land and get people out of oppression. There is also Jürgen Moltmann's theology of hope. I said there's Professor Jesse Mugambi's theology of reconstruction that has gained currency across Africa. There's these so-called American prosperity theologies. There is Afro-Pentecostalism theology, where Pentecostals employ some elements of African culture in order to build on their charismatic appeal, and many other contemporary theologies. Of course, there is also African theology of hospitality, or African Christian hospitality. Yes, there is theology of hospitality. There is also other theologies we have not mentioned. Concerning key characters in contemporary theological trends, or you may call them systematic theologians. They include Jürgen Moltmann, Karl Barth, Kaolana, Paul Tillich, Royce Buckoff, Hendrikas Buckoff, Arista McGrath, Wolfert Pannenberg, Grudem, Gustav Ahren, Mirad Eriksson, Thomas Oden, Reinhold Nimba, Richard Nimba, Hans Kung. These are the Western scholars who are part of the theological contemporary trends. In Africa, we have people